Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Madhvi Narejan, and we have Scott Maurer from ADVANTA IRA joining us today with Think Outside the Stocks. And this session is for the CARES Act, which is giving us a provision to take out 100K out of our retirement accounts and to discuss if this makes sense for you or not. Now with COVID, we have seen unprecedented times and the things which have changed for many people. So hopefully you are staying in and some states opening up. Hopefully you're getting a time to safely step out of your home and get some change in your environment. So with that, let's get started. I'm gonna get my screen shared with our topic today, that rethink your strategy. That if you're saying to yourself, no, I'm not taking that 100K from my retirement account with CARES Act. And we're going to talk about the advantage that you may have to take that out of that 401k prison especially and start utilizing it for your alternate investments. So welcome, Scott. Appreciate you taking this time out for us over the weekend.
No problem, Audrey. Pleasure to be on. I hope everybody gets something out of this hour or so that we have today.
Thank you so much, Scott. So let's go ahead. Just before we get in, disclaimer from our side, this is information provided here is educational purpose only. We are not advisors, we are not investment advisors, we're not CPAs or lawyers. So take this information, and whenever you want to invest into something, please do consult your team in terms of legal and CPA and stuff like that. This is just an education. We're just trying to bring in this different aspect of the investments to you, so you have enough knowledge about that. Just general housekeeping. It's a 1 hour live stream. We will try to stay within that timeline, but if you have questions, Scott is also welcome, and I'm also welcome to stay there. We are staying there for you to understand your queries and answer your questions. All of you are going to be on mute for the duration of the live stream. Please keep your QA session open where you can ask the questions, and we will address it at the end. The agenda quickly, we will talk about, it's really 3 segments that we're going to talk about. The first segment is to take out 100K out of your retirement accounts with the CARES Act. The next one is to put that 100K to work, and just creatively how you can utilize that. The next segment that Scott is going to focus on, that how you can get off the stock market roller coaster from your 401k and invest without taking penalties or loan on that retirement money. And he will also talk about the taxes that can be applied in retirement account if you're not careful, and how to avoid that. So that's pretty much the agenda. Most of you know me, but for those who don't know me, I'm the president and wealth strategist at Think Outside the Stocks. It's focused on commercial real estate investment. We help people with the education and with investment opportunities by doing a strategic partnership with really good syndicators. And I also help people to create their wealth management account. It's just like a banking system outside of the stocks that you can utilize to build grow your money, as well as invest it. It's kind of using the same dollar twice. And I come from a strong IT background, 17 years plus in project management, mostly with Deloitte Consulting. And in real estate, I have, we have a portfolio of single family, multifamily, Airbnb as well. And my passion really is to educate people, the busy professionals, to help them move closer to their financial freedom goal. And by creating that wealth management account for them, that system for them that can help them preserve, pass, and protect their wealth. Our guest speaker today is Scott Maurer from ADVANTA IRA. He's a director of business development there, and he has actually worked with numerous companies, numerous individuals, helping them to use their retirement account into self-directed IRAs and invest into other assets like real estate, for example. And he oversees sales and marketing and educates staff so that and to ensure that his clients is very well supported. And Scott is extremely helpful, and he's very knowledgeable. And fun fact, he's also an attorney and a member of Florida Bar. So welcome again, Scott.
Well, Madhvi, again, thanks for having me. And yeah, nice, got my bio there. Good. So yeah, and I am an attorney, although I don't do any legal work for our clients, but at least gives me
Yes.
a different understanding of the things we'll talk about.
Yep, yeah, but that's kind of nice to have that background and that understanding of things, having that background. So that one of the discussions that I had with you, I really appreciated that. So thank
Sure.
you. Yeah. So again, just a visual of what today's focus is, because we do not want you to get confused with these three different buckets. So the first information that we're going to share with you is really taking that 401k, your current 401k, you can never withdraw from unless you roll it over, right? Unless you leave your job and you roll it over. So this, with the CARES Act, you're actually getting that opportunity from your current 401k or any retirement account, so to take that 100k distribution. And Scott is going to talk about it in a little bit. So that's one stream that we're going to talk about it today. The second one is about the old 401k. Sometimes we just don't roll it over, it just stays there if we leave the job with the employer. But Scott is going to talk about how you can get that control, and instead of just investing in stock market, how you can invest in alternate investments without taking any loan or any penalty. And that's by creating the self-directed IRA account. And you can see on the right hand side what a different kind of, it's just some examples of investments you can actually do in your retirement account. And the third thing that Scott is going to talk about is, the tax in IRA. If you're not careful when you're doing these alternate investments, there is going to be there's a tax that is going to be applied on your leveraged money. And Scott is going to talk about how you can avoid that tax too. So that's just a quick visual for you, what the three things that we're going to try to achieve today. Before we get into it, the strategy, the goal that, think outside the stocks, try to help people, help you guys, is basically to focus on that big why. The big why here is reaching the financial freedom so that you can live the life of choices and not financial responsibilities. When I had to put a hard stop to my career in 2015, not by choice, that's since then I have been very passionate about, not just for myself but for others too, to reach that goal of living with your choices, not financial responsibilities. And the way we help is that we help you to look at, take that, it's kind of for the change in perspective, right? So it's just not about saving and investing, but we help you to take a step back. It's kind of a bird's eye view of that perspective about wealth maximization of your wealth, so that you can grow, preserve, protect, and pass that to generation. So that's how we help in Think Outside the Stocks. And the way we help you to do that is by looking at your wealth in a pyramid structure, really. So in the bottom of the pyramid is where you are saving your emergency money. That's your protection. That's your hedge against everything. So that's something we help you with, setting that up in terms of wealth maximization account, which is guaranteed growth of your money without any risk, zero risk here, because this is really your foundation here. So we help you create that foundation. And as you move up to this pyramid, then your risk is kind of going up and your control is kind of going down. So the first step here is your income, your direct investments, in terms of maybe real estate investment that you're directly investing, rentals and stuff, your business income, your job. And the second layer is the indirect. The third layer is actually the indirect investments in terms of the syndicated investments or private lending or oil and gas. And the top layer, which is the speculative, which is a high risk, for example, the stock market, right? So we help you in creating this foundation here in terms of money and protection. And as you cross past that emergency money protection, and if you have more money in here, you can start utilizing that investments into different layers here. We also help you in, in education and bringing the investment in the third layer, which is the syndicated real estate investments. And you can start utilizing that same money and have that cash flow earnings that you're getting here and build that foundation a little bit stronger. And overall, just to think about it as a structure around it, to put that protection all around your wealth, right? So the estate planning, the insurance, that's another look so that you can preserve, protect, and pass that generational wealth. So this is how Think Outside the Stocks, help you. So with that, I pass it on to Scott to talk about today's topic. Yes, even you can take 100K out of your 401k. So
All
Scott,
right.
go ahead and share.
Okay, I'm trying to click the share screen. It says it won't allow me while you're sharing. So
Yeah.
there we go. Now I can.
Yeah.
Let me find the PowerPoint here, and so you should be able to see the slides there, on the screen.
Yes.
So yeah, great, Madhvi, great setup. And I think just for everybody who's listening, I'm going to start and maybe go a little bit backwards and kind of give a good understanding of what self-directed IRAs are to begin with and where they came from. And then we'll lead that discussion right back into the COVID withdrawals and how you can utilize your money. So I'm going to talk, about today about using the IRAs, using your old 401ks, and again, possibly even your current 401k, really to invest in alternative assets. I went over my background. Again, here's my contact information. So if anyone wants to jot it down and call me with any questions, I'm always available to answer those, whether it's an email, you want to give me a phone call, or set up a time to talk to go over your specific certain circumstance. Happy to reach out, happy to talk to you, whether it's about self-direction or you just have general IRA questions. I'm always willing to help. But Madhvi already covered the rest of my kind of educational background. I have been in the industry since 2006 and saw the dips in 2008 and 2009, and saw a lot of people at that, after that time, kind of everything settled out, looking for alternative assets and turning to a self-directed IRA to do that. We have our own disclaimer as well. We don't give any legal tax or investment advice, and that's really the important thing I'd want you to take away from our disclaimer is that we hold a lot of different types of assets in a self-directed IRA, but it's always up to you as the account owner to decide what's important when you're doing your due diligence and doing your due diligence on the particular investment, making sure you're comfortable doing, making that particular asset part of your portfolio. Our role is to process paperwork and keep things tax protected inside the IRAs and 401ks, but the investment decisions are yours, which is obviously the benefit of the self-directed IRA is you're getting a lot more freedom to invest. We've been around for over 20 years. We have over $1.3 billion in assets under management that we hold. We do not hold any stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. It is strictly alternative assets that we'll all talk about those in just a moment. But we have over $1.3 billion in assets. We have 2 offices, one in the Tampa Bay area, one in Atlanta. But we do work with people throughout the country. So it's whether you're in California, New York, Texas. We even have a client in Hawaii. We have a few clients who live in Europe who have IRA accounts that are invested in alternative assets. We can work with anyone anywhere. We really try to separate ourselves in 2 ways. One is our customer service, giving every client one point of contact in our office. You don't call an 800 number to get a question answered. You call your account manager, and that person will, have their direct line, have their email to reach them. And we also try to do a lot of education. That's why I was excited when Madhvi asked me to join today. And come on, we like talking about what we do because most people have no idea what a self-directed IRA is. So we do a lot of webinars, seminars. We have a lot of videos available on our on-demand YouTube channel. So we try to keep people educated about what we do as much as possible. So again, some of you on the call might have already heard of a self-directed IRA before, but I always like to cover this anyway because some of you may have just heard about it, but some of you may not have heard about it. really what is a self-directed IRA account? Why haven't you've been exposed to this in the past? A self-directed IRA is really an account in which you have complete control over what assets that you're choosing to make, again, part of your portfolio. It's not picking from a list of investments that a brokerage firm or a bank is going to offer you. It's the ability to find alternative assets, invest in things that are outside of the norm, outside of the stock market. Again, really allowing you to have control, to build your wealth, to build your retirement account with assets that you understand and that you control. And a lot of our clients do like to get outside of this. Part of their genesis, part of their motivation is to get outside of the stock market and into those assets that they actually deem safer. A lot of financial advisors out there, they're brought up in the world of the stock market, and they think that that's where your retirement account money has to go. That's the safest bet. But in reality, I think we all know that that's not always the best solution for people out there. It's good to have diversity among your asset holdings, and making a self-directed IRA part of that, I think, is key. So again, the assets that we hold are not publicly traded, so the stock market doesn't influence the returns that much on the investments that are held inside a self-directed IRA. So again, self-directed simply means that you're in control of choosing the asset, not being pigeonholed by what a brokerage firm is making you invest in. And I think the one question we get a lot, either from people who are brand new, who give us a call, or even clients, who've been clients for years, say, I wish I'd known about this sooner. And most people haven't heard of self-directed accounts because they have an IRA, they have an old 401k or current 401k with a bank or brokerage firm is where their money's being held. And those particular companies do not allow for you to invest in alternative assets. They only allow you to invest in those products that they sell. So if they're a brokerage firm, you're limited to something that's publicly traded to being held within their particular IRA account. Now, IRS rules allow for a very broad range of investments. We'll go over the kind of limitations here in a minute on the things you can or can't do. But it's not the IRS rules that the brokerage firms limit you to publicly traded assets. That's their business decision. Similar to, I use this analogy sometimes, a fast food restaurant, McDonald's or Burger King, they sell hamburgers and they sell chicken sandwiches and fries, and that's about it. They could sell pizza, they could sell tacos, they could sell a lot of different things, but that's their business model. They limit you to what those choices are. But you know very well, if you're going to go grab lunch one day, that you don't have to just go to McDonald's or Burger King. You can go to other places and get other assets, other food. So that's kind of the same thinking within the self-directed community. Is there are other things that you can invest in. You just have to find the right place that's willing to hold it. So just keep that in mind as we go through. Probably 70 to 75% of the assets that our clients invest in are real estate based. That's anything from a rental, single family rental home, a rehab project, commercial, real estate, condos, duplexes. We're seeing a large increase in people investing into multifamily and syndications, which we'll kind of go over a case study in that towards the end of the hour on how that works. So a lot of different things that are tied to real estate, REITs, even land. And we see even a number of what I call paper assets that are still in that real estate realm where, your IRA could lend money to a third party and they give you a mortgage on their house. So your IRA is not holding actual real estate. It's holding the loan that is secured by a piece of real estate behind it. Or people investing in tax liens or tax deeds. Again, these are all possible investments that you can make within your IRA account. Don't really touch on this too much in individual presentations, but it is possible to invest in a lot of other alternatives. So other things that we've seen, people investing in private LLCs, people investing in farm animals, partnerships, and movie projects. You can buy physical gold and silver inside an IRA account. Forex trading, private stocks. Again, the list really does go on and on. Because you'll see in a minute, the IRS does not publish a list of all of the possible investments. They only laid out the rules for things that you cannot do inside of an IRA. So it's not always important to try to understand all of the things that are possible. It's more important maybe just to gather, hey, here's what I can't do. So when I'm presented with an opportunity, if it's not in that prohibited arena, it's something you'd be able to invest in. But again, a lot of what we see, a lot of what our clients invest in is real estate type assets. The motivations behind people who choose to self-direct. So kind of have seen over the years, people fall into probably one of these three buckets, or maybe a couple of them. For some people, it's the tax benefit that when you invest inside of an IRA or invest inside of a 401k, many times the returns that you get are tax protected. So you personally don't pay any tax on the income going back to your IRA account. So if you have a investment that's going to pay off a healthy return, or have a good deal of appreciation where you have a lot of gains coming, you might make that investment inside your IRA so you don't have that tax impact on a personal basis. For others, it's a new source of capital. So if you've invested in real estate in the past, or maybe you've invested in syndications, you've put $50,000 into a syndication, it's doing really well, and another opportunity comes along and you don't want to miss out on that opportunity as well, you may choose to simply pull money or use money in your IRA or 401k to take advantage of that particular opportunity. So it's, for some people, it's just, hey, a different place I can grab money from to make an investment. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of times we'll have people who want to buy a piece of real estate. They have it, the money's available in their IRA. So for them, it's a new source of capital. But then they casually mention, hey, and the added benefit is I have some of my money outside of the stock market now. I'm going to get consistent rental income. I'm going to get consistent dividends paid from a syndication back to my IRA account. It's not subject to what's going on Wall Street and around the world. It's much more local. And so again, that's kind of the benefit to people why they're choosing to self-direct. Now, the types of monies that can be self-directed, I think this is the important slide for if you're thinking, hey, what monies could I use towards these investment options. Any type of IRA qualifies to be self-directed. So if you have a traditional or rollover IRA, you have a Roth IRA account, if you're self-employed or have a small business, you might have a SEP or a simple IRA account. Those accounts can all be self-directed regardless of where they're currently held. There's no issue in getting that money moved over. The differences between those accounts are a little bit in their tax treatment, how much you can contribute maybe year to year. Again, if you have questions on those specifics, I'm happy to answer those. Also, there can be self-directed any former employer plan. So if you worked for a company and you retired, you quit, you got laid off, once you no longer work for that employer, you can move that money tax-free to a traditional IRA account and then in turn self-directed. So again, that's important to note with those former employer plans are always available to be moved. Current 401ks we're going to touch on in just a minute. A lot of times there are restrictions for moving that money and getting it in a self-directed place. But as we're going to go over with the COVID-19 and the CARES Act, there may be some opportunities if you pull money out of those accounts to actually, instead of putting it back into your current employer's plan, just simply putting it in a self-directed IRA. Now, the other plan I'm going to cover in a little bit more detail here, to the right of your screen here, is the solo 401k plan. So for individuals who own their own business, who don't have employees other than yourself or a spouse, a solo 401k plan can be the best of both worlds for a couple different reasons when it comes to retirement accounts. So a solo 401k works just like a regular 401k would you have through your employer, except for with the solo plan, you are the employer. That it is you. It's just you and the plan. Again, you don't have any employees that qualify. You can still contribute, make large contributions. You can see there up to $57,000 a year. You can defer from your contributions either as an employee or the employer. So you can lump fund a lot more money into a solo 401k plan each year. You can roll over money from other IRAs into that plan. You can borrow from the plan. You can make some of your contributions Roth money as well. So the 401k, again, it just gives you a lot more freedom and flexibility. Now, the key thing with a 401k, you do have to have your own business without employees to qualify. Now, it does not have to be your primary business. So if I work for a company and I have a W-2 and I have my 401k through my employer, but I do some outside consulting, I do some outside work on the side where I earn some income, that outside job, that side job can be a basis for you starting a solo 401k plan. And you can make up the contributions that you don't make to your work 401k, you can make instead to that side business 401k you have. And the huge things why the solo K is kind of in vogue and popular where people who invest in syndications is that a 401k plan is not subject to something called UBIT tax, unrelated business income tax. So when you invest within your IRA account, a lot of times the investments, if you're getting back passive income to your account, you don't have to worry about that. If you invest just as a cash position for a non-leveraged asset, your IRA, your 401k doesn't pay any tax at all. But if you do invest into an entity like a syndication where there is underlying debt, there is leveraged assets within that particular investment, your IRA would be subject to what's called unrelated business income tax. Very quickly, if your IRA was invested into a syndication that is 70% leveraged, that means that your IRA would be subject to this tax on 70% of the income that it receives. The other 30% is tax-free, but your IRA would have to worry, and you'd have to look at the impact that this UBIT tax might have on an IRA account. So back to the solo K, the huge benefit is solo 401ks do not pay UBIT tax on those leveraged investments. So if you were looking at investing primarily in syndications, almost all of which are leveraged, or at least a great majority of them are, if you can set up a solo K plan, if you have that side business, or maybe it is your primary business, setting up that plan allows you to avoid that UBIT tax, and you don't have to worry about it going forward. It's one of the huge advantages and why we see a lot of people doing solo K plans for those types of investments. So again, if anyone has questions, please type them into the chat box. I'll make sure we get to them. Regarding the types of plans, I'm happy to revisit that. Just some other general rules on IRA distributions, and then I'm going to get into the special COVID-19 and the CARES Act rules. But if you're under the age of 59 and a half and you take money out personally from an IRA account or even a 401k, you're subject to a 10% penalty. They say this is in general. Now, the rules might be a little bit different this year. We'll talk about that. So any monies pulled out prior to 59 and a half are hit with a 10% penalty. And it's also included in your income for regular IRA accounts. So you do have to pay tax and penalty under 59 and a half. At 59 and a half, there's no 10% penalty, but you would still have income tax due on the money you pull out. And if you take that money and pull it out and put it into an investment, you're going to be paying tax on the investment income as well. So if you're looking at taking an advantage of an outside alternative asset, that's why keeping it within the IRA, you don't have to pay tax when you move the money over. You keep it under that IRA umbrella, and you don't pay tax going forward on any of the income as well. At age 72, with all retirement accounts except Roth IRAs, you do have to pull a required minimum distribution each year out of the account. As you can see, there's some exceptions for that 10% penalty if you're under 59 and a half. Again, we'll go over the big one here in just a minute. If you have a 401k, you can borrow from it up to $50,000 or 50% of the account value, whichever is less. And again, those are an exception to that for this year. If you do inherit an IRA as well, you can treat it as your own if it was your spouse that left it to you, or if you're inheriting from a parent or a grandparent, you have to distribute that account over 10 years. So those are the general IRA distribution rules, and those rules don't change if it's a self-directed account or whether it's a regular brokerage account. So again, 10% withdrawal penalty under 59 and a half, ordinary income after age 59 and a half. So these are the rules as they were set and laid out up until a couple months ago, all the way through this year. Now, these will probably be the same rules that are in effect in 2021. But what has obviously changed here in 2020, unless you've been on a sabbatical for 3 months in the middle of the desert, not paying attention to the news, obviously COVID-19 has had a huge impact on our society in general. And the government, obviously in response, passed a bill, everybody's, I think, relatively familiar with it, called the CARES Act, that addressed a lot of different things. Loans for small businesses, paycheck protection programs, et cetera. But there also were some specific provisions related to retirement accounts in this CARES Act. One, the 401k limit of $50,000 or 50% of your account value, they increased that limit to $100,000. Now, a 401k loan is when you pull money out of that 401k and you have to pay it back over a 5-year period of time. So it's not you simply taking a distribution, it is you taking a loan against your 401k and being obligated to pay that money back. So they increased that loan limit to $100,000. The required minimum distributions for people over the age of 72, they are suspended this year. You do not have to take an RMD for 2020 because the kind of the stock market falling, they figured they didn't want to require people to take distributions if they didn't have to. And the contribution and filing deadline, so your ability to put more money into your IRA, also that you're paying, simply filing your taxes, was extended to July 15th from April 15th as well. So that being said, the other huge provision, and I'm going to kick it back to Madhvi here in just a minute, is also the ability for you to take distributions from your IRA, from your 401k, whether it's a current or past plan, take that money up to $100,000 penalty free. So that 10% penalty we talked about under age of 59 and a half, it doesn't apply for these qualified distributions. Now, it's not tax free, although we'll tell you how you can keep it tax free by rolling it over. But you can take up to $100,000 out penalty free and pay the taxes back over 3 years, or return the funds to a qualified account, whether it's an IRA or another 401k, within 3 years to avoid the tax. Now, to qualify, you or your spouse or dependent has to be diagnosed with COVID-19, or, and this is kind of the big nebulous definition, you have to have experienced adverse financial consequences due to being laid off, furloughed, quarantined, or you had your hours reduced. And that's the language it's in the act. It's nothing very specific. There's nothing you have to show to the government at this point that you've experienced adverse financial consequences. But I imagine a lot of people in America have definitely had adverse financial consequences, even if they're still employed, by having some hours reduced or being quarantined and seeing a reduction in income. So if you meet those qualifications, either you're diagnosed with COVID or you've had experience, the adverse financial consequences, you can take a distribution from your IRA or your 401k up to $100,000 without that penalty. And then you have the ability to either pay the tax back over 3 years or put that money back into an IRA to avoid that tax. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Madhvi, and let you kind of explain a little bit more on that time frame with that distribution. Oh, Madhvi, I think you're muted.
Sorry
there
about
you go.
that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Scott. That's a lot of information. Every time I talk with you, I learned something new. So thank you so much for putting that in perspective about self-directed IRAs. And I think even for the attendees, right, just what are we really trying with the self-directed IRAs? To get that control, and you could see that what are the different type of investments you could do, just getting away from that traditional stock market. So the examples with, which is immense amount of variety that you can put so that you can achieve that diversification in terms of your investments. What was interesting for me, Scott, was the farm animals. I didn't know I could invest in the livestock in there. So that was interesting. But anyway, thanks for covering the COVID related, the CARES Act related thing also. And just wanted to put a timeline here, just a visual timeline on when these things can be done, right? So this year you can take that 100K out of your retirement account. And please note here, I'm just putting that 100K, which is the distribution. It's as good as cash for you. I've not put the additional provision, which is from 50K, the provision of 100K in loan. In addition to that, you can take that 100K loan out, which you have to return in 5 years. But if you take that 100K distribution, first of all, please keep in mind that you have time this year to take it out. So I know right now you might feel that it's not a right time to pull out the money, but at any point this year, you feel that it's the right time, that market has stabilized a little bit and you can have a quick chance to take it out. And the main purpose is to take out of that current 401k, really. So that's the most opportunity in here, rather than you can take it out from any retirement account, any IRA or anything. But opportunity is to use the current 401k, because that's really your stock money. You never get a chance to take it out unless you have changed your jobs. So once you take it out, you really have time till April 2022 when you file your taxes that year to decide if you're going to keep it or you're going to start paying taxes on it. So you use it, for your expenses if you're impacted, or you could do invest. And we highly encourage you to look into investment opportunities and creating cash flow during that time. So if you have the scenario, so instead of directly utilizing it as expenses, if you are impacted and you need that cash, create a cash flow and then utilize that cash flow so that if you want to give it back, you can give it back. But when you're giving it back, it's not going back, as a lump sum. It's going back, every year. Sorry, the taxes you're, if you decide to keep it, the taxes you're paying, 1/3 every year. So in April 2022, you'll pay taxes on 33K, and so is in 23 and 24. So that's the biggest opportunity here. And when you have taken it out from 401K, if you don't want to keep it and pay these taxes, you can return it in IRA, and that's another opportunity that you're still getting that control on investing. So once you have taken it out, you may ask Madhvi that where would I use it? Why would I take it out? I don't need it. Why would I take it out? So this is the time we can help you to creatively think about this 100K. So the step one that we would say that, as we have talked about the foundation, in couple of slides back, the wealth maximization account, right? So we talked about creating that foundation. So I would recommend that you create that protection for you. So you create that layer, which is, so, you fund that layer where you create your banking system. And once you have that banking system, then you can actually leverage the same dollar and start investing into your direct or indirect investing. So we would say that, step one, create the foundation of this pyramid of your wealth maximization. And that's where it has the guaranteed growth. So it's protected. It has that hedge for your money. And why would you do that? So these are the advantages of creating your banking system. It's for to preserve, protect, and pass your generational wealth. And you're building that foundation there, which does not have any contribution limit, which has tax-free growth, and also the distribution. This is the only thing that gives you guaranteed returns, right? 3.5% is the guaranteed return here, which is mandated by the government. And then it also has proven dividends. So these companies go back 150 years of the dividend history, up to 6% or plus. So you have that guaranteed returns in here, plus the proven dividends. You also have easy access. If you need emergency money, there is no credit check or no approvals. You can have any reason, irrespective of the age or purpose. So any amount that you can access, based on what value you have in that account. So you can actually access that and take the same money and put into investments to create your cash flow. And also it provides automatic asset protection, and it passes the tax-free. So that money gets passed on tax-free. So that would I would recommend that you create that foundation first once you take that 100K out. And next is think about the investment. Now we think outside the stocks, we always are looking at opportunities which satisfy this criteria here. So first of all, those which has high growth potential, it is tied up to the lower market volatility, and it's truly diversified. And, of course, saving the taxes is one of the thing that we focus on the most. And it's also, truly passive. So building that investment portfolio, that's the step number two, which of course the real estate investments that we look at gives you that opportunity. The challenge with real estate investment is, there's just so many ways you can invest into real estate. And for to be that, the 5 criterias, and the most key criteria is the passive, being completely passive. Syndication real estate investment in terms of commercial investment, for example, multifamily, we have found that that's the most key for you to participate in. So once you created that foundation in your wealth maximization account, you take that money, invest into a syndication. And just a snapshot about the syndication, right? A lot of you may know about syndication already, but here's just a quick overview about what syndication is. So syndication is basically when investors pool their financial and intellectual resources together to invest in the properties which are much bigger than that they could afford or manage on their own. So the sponsor team and the syndicator team, for example, they bring their intellectual resources, their equity, and their management skills to the table. Passive investors like you, the limited partners, they bring the equity to the table. Together, they create either 25 to 30% of the value that they want to put in and get the bank loan to purchase and manage that multifamily asset in terms of syndication. So that's how typically the syndication model will look like. And what are the advantages of the syndicated investments, right? So we focus on that, and we have a lot of education that helps you to invest in this confidently. The advantage we have is these are risk-adjusted returns because it's backed by that asset, the multifamily asset or the real estate asset. It is backed by that. We lost a lot of money in the 401ks with the stock market, but I'm sure in the IRAs where there were investments in real estate syndication in terms of that, it's not as much as loss even with the COVID right now. With above average returns, it's last 15 to 18 years, it's averaged about 13% annually. So that's a really a good return to take a look at. It also provides threefold tax benefit, and we have another education focused on a multifamily, which actually talks about how this tax benefit is done. It also has a complete passive cash flow. So for you, really, you have to evaluate the investment, move into investment, and you get the cash flow every year, every 3 months or so. And at the end of it, when they sell it, you get also the equity. So that's really the passive part is really key for you. And it has that significant upside, which is realized on the sale or the refinance of that property. So just an example of what a typical investment in syndication would look like to give you an idea if you want to, have further education with it. Say, for example, there's an apartment complex which is priced at 20 million, and there are some loan terms here. The syndication team evaluates it and puts out the plan, the business plan, and it gives you that offer, right? So in this offer, they're saying that there's going to be an annual cash flow 8%. So if you invested 100K, that means 8,000, you're going to get completely passive. You don't have to worry about the repairs, the rehab, the rentals, or anything. You just basically, it's a mail in money. You're just going to get it directly in your bank deposits. The total returns they are saying is going to be 80%, which includes on sale what the upside that they have realized, right? So if you get that 80% over the period of duration is 3 to 5 years, so even if 5 years, it's still a 16% IRR. And this is an example, a real example. I've pulled it up from one of the investments that we have invested earlier this year. So in summary, if you invested 100K in 3 to 5 years, that 100K could become 180K, including your annual cash flow and upside and the return. So that's how the typical investment opportunity looks like. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Scott. Scott, do you want to share your screen? I can stop sharing.
Let me go. Yeah, I'll go right back to my
Yeah.
presentation. So yeah, and I think we had a couple of questions. Well, I don't know if you want me to address them now, Madhvi. I think someone asked, I think with this COVID-19, if you can avoid taxes if you pay back the 100,000 into the 401k by April 2022. And I think that was the point of your slide and your timeline is, yeah, if you get that money put back into an IRA or put back into a 401k by, was it 2020, April 2024, like the end of that tax year in 2023, you don't have any tax consequence. Now, I think the way it works is you might have to pay some of the taxes. If you don't put the full 100 back until 2023, you may pay taxes in 2021 and 2022. But once you do that rollover back in 2023, you can go back and amend your tax return to get that money back. I think is what I've seen how that works. So yeah, if you put the money back in, ultimately you're not going to be taxed on what you pull out for this COVID distribution.
That's great to know. So if you're not utilizing it, you're not paying taxes on that. But meanwhile, that couple of years, you can still get that investment going in and have that cash flow. There is another question in the chat box, Scott. Can losing money in stock market be considered as loss due to COVID? My employment is not really affected, so I can still take out 100K without penalty.
If I had to guess, I'd probably say not. Just because I think everybody had a loss. You know, a lot of people would have had a loss regardless, and I don't think they wanted to open up to everybody. But the problem, I guess, with how the rule is worded, it is, I think, supposed to be related to your employment, but it is very broad. So, you know, we don't get involved in telling people when they, you know, what would qualify or what wouldn't. That's when it gets into that weird or gray area. So it might be something, at least from my opinion, talk to a CPA. But Madhvi, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
So I talked to my lawyers. So Anderson Advisor is the lawyers, and we talked to them about it. What they indicated is really, it's when you say that I'm impacted by COVID, right? So they are not asking in much detail. It's what is that impact that you have. An impact for me is even my childcare being impacted, or I'm being home. We are working from home, and so many things have changed. So it really depends on your custodian, but you could just put a letter together and say that I'm impacted, and then how they're asking about what exactly that impact. That's the ambiguous area. That's not really clear. And this is one thing I would say, that try for it, and if you might actually get it. So if you get it, you can utilize that, and it's 100K. So it's big amount. So that's what I personally would say. And it's not legal advice, but at least give it a try.
Yeah, I was gonna say, from what I've seen so far, like as far as taking that distribution, it is really the company amends your plan to allow for it, and I don't think you have to provide any special documentation in order to get it. So again, that's just, yeah, go on your own legal or tax advice on that. But I don't think there's any, as far as we know, the IRS isn't going to be making you prove, every penny that you're taking out as for your financial consequences. But that's the unfortunate thing sometimes when the government passes a law so quickly, is that you don't get all these other details right away. So something to definitely keep in touch in the next few weeks and few months to see if they clarify it at all.
Right. So first of all, it's that ambiguity of it, right? That they don't provide that clear guidance. And the second of all, that with so many people are taking advantage of it, what's their capacity to go back and check everybody and say that, okay, what exactly you had that problem. So that's how I personally look at it.
Yep, that's definitely I think a way to look at it for sure, because yeah, the manpower they have to go back and go through all those details is probably isn't there.
Yeah. We have another question, Scott.
Sure.
Thanks for the webinar. Of course, you're welcome, Vivek. In the previous slide, can you avoid taxes if you pay back? Oh, I think this is already answered. Sorry. So if I am still employed, but my income is affected, is that considered an impact?
If you're still employed and your income was impacted in your job, I think yes, it probably, that's an adverse financial consequence to you. And I think that's the point of it. That's kind of why they put this in place for these distributions, is people who are, even if you're still employed, you can't get unemployment. You can't, some people aren't getting the stimulus checks that the government sent out a few weeks ago. So it's for other people where, my income might still be up, but it's not where it was. And so you can take money out of the 401k. So yeah, even if you're still employed, if your income has been affected by it, then absolutely that's what that distribution is there for.
Yeah, and then as I understand, Scott, if both husband and wife are working, it's 100K each, right? It's not 100K for the family.
I believe so, yes. Yep, I think it's per individual. Yep. So yeah, if we want to, we can kind of switch gears. I can finish up at least my portion of the presentation here today.
Please.
So stepping aside from the COVID, I mean, and those distributions, even regular moving of money to a self-directed IRA, I think this is the important slide to remember as well, that when you move money directly from either another IRA to a self-directed account, or maybe that old 401k, or even if your current 401k plan, you're allowed to do that. When the money goes into another retirement account, like an IRA, like a solo K plan, there's no tax consequence to you. There's no penalties involved. It's simply taking the money and moving it from one custodian to the other. And you do that either by doing a transfer, which is IRA to IRA, or doing a direct rollover, which is when it comes from a 401k or a 403b plan into an IRA. And because that money doesn't touch your hands, it's a non-taxable event. As we can see now with the COVID distributions, if the money can touch your hands and it can still go back in tax and penalty free as well. So that's the thing I think sometimes advisors get confused on when people talk to them about investing in a syndication or investing in real estate, is the advisor thinks you're pulling money out personally, which would be subject to tax, which would be subject to possible penalties depending on your age, and then you're using the money to invest. But when you're self-directing, it's simply keeping the money underneath that tax umbrella. So it's like moving money from a Fidelity to a Schwab or from a Schwab to a Vanguard. You're just moving it to a different custodian, in this case, ADVANTA, that then allows you to make that other investment inside of the IRA. So it is not a distribution to you. It's either a transfer or a direct rollover. Again, there's minimal tax reporting done, and there's no tax consequence either way you do it. So again, there's no penalty when you're looking to self-direct and you have money in an account. There's no penalties, no taxes involved moving that money over and then getting it invested. Now, in the first part of my presentation, I mentioned some of the investments that were possible out there, but I also mentioned the IRS says there's only certain things you cannot invest in with your IRA or with your 401k plan. So they don't have a master list of all permissible investments. They simply say you can't invest in life insurance and you cannot invest in collectibles. And your collectibles would include antiques, alcohol, artwork, stamps, coins, things of that nature. They do allow some coins that are gold and silver American Eagles and things like that. But those are the only two investments that you cannot purchase within an IRA account. So whether it's rental property or syndications or notes or mortgages, things like that, that's all possible because they are not life insurance and they are not collectibles. The other restriction that the IRS does put in place is you cannot have your IRA transact with any disqualified person or make an investment in which a disqualified person receives a benefit. The disqualified persons for your account are yourself, your spouse, your parents and grandparents, your children and grandchildren. So for this reason, with the prohibited transaction rules, your IRA cannot lend money to you. It cannot buy a piece of real estate that you want to live in. It can't buy a piece of real estate that you or somebody already owns. So when you do have those particular factors involved, when you're trying to involve your IRA in buying an asset where you're going to either get a benefit from it or you're going to buy it directly from someone who's disqualified, that's not going to be allowed. Now, the great thing with syndications is unless you're investing in your son or daughters or your parents' syndication deal, these issues don't come up at all. But when you are buying rental properties, things like that, you just have to make sure it's got to be specifically from an investment perspective. You cannot buy a second home. You cannot buy a vacation home inside the IRA account. So those are the only things that are prohibited: the life insurance and collectibles and the dealings with the disqualified persons, which are, again, yourself and your spouse and people directly up and down your lineal tree. Now, UBIT and UDFI tax, we talked about that a little bit ago. That is the tax that applies if your IRA or 401k is subject to business income, not investment income. It also can apply for investments where there is leveraged real estate. And again, the UBIT tax for leveraged real estate only applies to IRA accounts. It does not apply to that solo 401k that I talked about. So if you, again, are self-employed or have a side business, that solo K plan allows you to make the investment into a leveraged real estate asset and not have to worry about the impact of this tax at all. Even if you do make the investment inside of the IRA and it's subject to UBIT tax, I know that it's not quite the boogeyman that some people make it out to be. Now, it's definitely a situation in which your IRA may then be subject to a little bit of tax, but your IRA can write off certain deductions and certain depreciation to limit how much tax would actually apply. So something to run by a CPA. But again, the thing to take away from the UBIT is that if you can qualify to have your own solo K plan, you do not have to worry about that UBIT tax at all when you're investing into syndications. So the easy process to start, it's a matter of filling out paperwork to open up an account, funding the account with a transfer or a rollover, and then ultimately investing and telling us what investments you wish to make inside of your IRA account. And I think it's important for people to decide what type of investor they are. You have more active investors, people who buy rentals and rehabs, who want more control, who want to be in charge of making the decisions. They want to be more hands-on. But with that type of investing, it's a little more time and energy and expenses involved for you, and having those responsibilities. Then we also have at ADVANTA a number of passive investors, people who would rather put their money into a private placement or a syndication, or do some private lending where there's not as much time involved. They're not bothered by the tenants calling them at night, or the little details here and there. And the thing, Maud, you kind of mentioned as well, that mailbox money, when every month you get a check for that distribution. For your proceeds, it just gets deposited to the account. You don't have to do much else for it. So again, you have active investors, you have the passive investors. We have people, honestly, who do both. It just kind of might depend on the project. But in deciding what type of investor you are, I think that might sometimes tell you what route you might go down. I have two quick case studies I want to go through. I know we're getting close on time. I'll just run through these quickly to show you a little bit about what the process looks like. In this case, buying rental real estate. So we're going to have John, who's a more active investor. He has a 401k plan. He wants to buy some rental property, down the street. He drives by it every day to and from work, sees this property in his neighborhood, knows he could get a good deal on it, and be a good asset, a good investment for his IRA funds. John would open up his account, request that rollover, and then again, he finds the investment property and makes the offer to purchase. We will work with John to make sure that when he's signing that contract for the real estate, that it's in the name of his IRA account. And we will work with the closing agent to make sure ultimately that the deed to that property is titled to the name of John Smith's IRA. So the actual owner is his IRA account as its own entity. So in the grand scheme of the process, John is getting the account started, he's finding the property, but we're going to help make sure that the money gets moved over properly, so there's no tax consequence. Make sure the investment is titled properly, so again, there's no tax consequence to John. And then going forward, once the property has been closed on, we will, ADVANTA, as the administrator of his account, will receive all of the income. So if it's a rental property, that tenant will send the rent check to us every month. We deposit it to the account. Any expenses related to that investment, the property taxes, insurance, we pay those out of the cash in his account. So rental money comes in, expenses go out, and that's what we do at ADVANTA is take care of all of that record keeping and administration. So just some of the numbers. Again, the property is rented. That cash, the net cash flow stays inside the IRA, no tax consequence to John. When he sells the property and makes a profit down the line, all of the profit comes back into his IRA as well. Again, no tax consequences. He's building up his retirement account with rental property rather than in the stock market and dividends and seeing his funds go that way. He's using the monthly cash flow from the rental property as well as the profits on the sale to help grow his IRA. And again, that's a little bit more involved. Property John's going to have to be more active in deciding what work needs to be done on the property, getting his tenant involved, and paying rent and keeping track of things. So it's a little more active example. Again, it's possible. The property name is going to be purchased in the name of the IRA account. That's something that we are involved from step one, making sure you get that done properly. The money comes from the IRA, and it is possible to partner with yourself and other people. So we've had husband and wives use their IRA accounts together to buy a piece of real estate, and it has structured as a partnership. Or somebody's used their IRA funds and they've partnered up with a friend who had some cash. So that certainly is possible as well. And I can certainly happy to go into more detail about individuals on a personal basis, but just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that. Now switching gears to a more passive investment, again, the syndication or private placement, we have Jane and Rocky. And Jane's the one with some cash. She's got money in an IRA at Vanguard. She meets Rocky. Rocky's got his private offering set up. He's going to purchase and remodel an apartment complex. And he's going to provide Jane with those subscription agreements, the documents, the prospectus that shows what he's planning to do, and what her returns are. Madhvi showed an example of some of the returns from an example. A lot of times those numbers are in the prospectus and the subscription agreement of what the plans are, what their prospecting will be returned back to the investor. So again, ADVANTA doesn't do due diligence on the investment, so it's up to Jane to read through the document, make sure she's comfortable with making that investment, and when she makes a decision to move forward, she's going to open up her account. We're going to help her get funds transferred from Vanguard to ADVANTA. Again, no tax consequence to move that money over, and we'll notify her when those funds arrive. And in this case, you know, in the case study one, John buying real estate, the deed on the property would be titled in the name of his IRA because that's the ownership document. In this case, the subscription agreement that Jane has for the private placement, that is the ownership document. And that also, again, needs to be filled out in the name of her IRA. And that's what Jane's account manager at ADVANTA will help her do. Go through that paperwork, get it filled out correctly, make sure she approves of it. Ultimately, we sign the documents, send that money to fund the investment, and then we will deposit the future dividends or profit splits back into her IRA account. So again, with both examples, what people are doing is simply looking at using some of their IRA funds, instead of having that in the stock market, instead of having it in investments they can't control, putting it into other avenues, whether it's a rental property, whether it's a syndication that they think will get them a better return or make them feel more secure with their particular investment option. If you're doing, if you're looking at making an investment and you have personal money and you have IRAs, sometimes you'll have this analysis where, should I use my IRA? Should I use personal funds? And there's certainly pros and cons for each. You know, with using personal money, you can take those earnings now and use it as you wish. It's cash flow to you. You don't have to worry about you, but if it's personal money, you can take some of those tax benefits on your return. But the downside of using personal money, obviously, you might have more income tax. Your gains will be subject to tax as opposed to going back into an IRA or 401k, where you don't have to necessarily worry about that as much. So sometimes, again, a lot of people have this analysis of which is better, IRA or non-IRA, which one should I use? And for some, this is a valid question when they're considering investment. Well, one other thing to consider, and I don't always think this is the right analysis to use or something to think about. Now, maybe property specific, you have this analysis, but the other question I like to throw out there to people is what investment is going to give you a couple of different factors here. So if you have an IRA or you have a 401k, you have to have that money invested somewhere. Putting it in a bank CD at 1% or less is not a good long-term scenario. You're going to lose pace to inflation. So you need to have your IRA funds and your 401k funds invested somewhere. So regardless if you have personal money to use or not, what are you going to do with your 401k plan? What investment is going to give you a better rate of return? What investment is going to give you the most consistent return? What investment is going to give you the ability to control your return? And really, what investment is going to give you more peace of mind, knowing your investment is secure? So again, if you're coming upon an investment, you need to put $50,000 into it. You may look at, do I use $50,000 personally, or do I use $50,000 of retirement funds? But ultimately, you should be looking at your retirement account saying, what am I going to do with this money that's in there? How can I deploy it? How can I use it? What other investments can I make to get something better, get something different going on inside the plan? And hopefully that's what I've shared with you today, is the ability and the knowledge, at least, to put this money into alternative assets. And obviously, Madhvi can share more on the different investments that are possible and things that she might have available as well to get those types of returns. But just always keep in mind, this is a different vehicle that you can use. And again, a lot of people, some of you on the call, this may be your first exposure to using retirement accounts and didn't know that you even had this possibility even existed. So again, my contact information is here on this last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions now. And certainly if you want to take it offline and give me a call or shoot me an email, I'm more than happy to jump on a call with you there too. So again, I want to thank Madhvi again for having me on today. Hopefully I've given out a lot of information that for people to digest. Reach back out to me. At this point, I'm happy to see what questions we have.
Yeah, great, Scott. A wealth of information. First of all, thank you so much. I mean, this is not just about this information, right? It's about changing that mindset, that how we can get off that roller coaster of the stock market. And you've put it so well that how we can start thinking about it. So really, people, first of all, think about how and when you want to get off that stock market roller coaster, and create a plan for yourself. Really, that when you want to get off, what you want to do with that money. So with that, I appreciate all of you staying more than an hour here, and we have a few more questions, so we will go through that and just wrap it up quickly. Scott, you do see the questions, right? Do you want me to read
I
it out?
do. Yeah.
Let's
So
read
someone
it out so
says,
people can also know what the question is being asked for.
yep, yep. So yeah, first question says, if I already have a W-2 income, you mentioned that I can still have a solo K. Is there a cap or limit on the W-2 income? The answer is no. So if you have a job, with an employer and you have a W-2, you can still have a solo K. If you have a separate side business, even if it's not extremely profitable or even very profitable at all, if you have that side business, you can set up a solo K to move your money into, and there is no limit on how much W-2 income you can have. The only limits with solo Ks and with 401ks is how much you can contribute each year into that particular plan, or if you have multiple plans, there's a cap for all of them combined. But there is no cap or limit on your W-2 income for having a solo K.
And one of the things I would like to add here, Scott, first of all, thank you for that. I always say to people that even if you write a book and that's your business, so there are two things, right? There is one, rolling over your old 401k into that solo 401k. So that gives you that advantage of utilizing that money to invest, avoiding that U bit. And the second aspect of it, that actually how much money you can put it into solo 401k. So that putting that money into solo 401k is based on what income your business has, but it doesn't still stop you from rolling over that previous money that you have and start utilizing it in a very tax effective manner. And one of the key things that I tell my investors that they can look at, if they have a rental, even a one rental, what they could do is they can have a business for a property management, and that would be an easier way to allow them to create this structure, and they can start investing into, for example, syndication using that money.
Yep, absolutely. Great answer, Madhvi. Good. Thanks for throwing that in there too. That's important to know. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to create some whole new industry or something to do to have that solo 401k.
Thanks, Scott. So the next question we have, does the COVID rule allow transfer from an active 401k, not an old, to SD IRA?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we talked about. I think that the interesting thing here is, you're supposed to meet one of those qualifications. Either you or your spouse or dependent has had COVID-19, or you've suffered adverse financial consequences due to being laid off, furloughed, quarantined, etc. So if you have that, then absolutely, yes, it allows you to take money out of the 401k plan and up to that $100,000. And at some point, if you want it, when you want to distribute that money back, you could certainly put it back into a self-directed IRA account. So absent those conditions, though, I think the way the rule is the spirit of the law is no, you can't just simply use it as a way to move money into an IRA. But again, I think as we discussed earlier, that adverse financial consequences is very nebulous and very somewhat open to interpretation. But if you do take the money out and you want to put it back at some point, you absolutely could put it back into a self-directed IRA.
Great, Scott. Thank you so much. So the next question we have, so SD IRA can't invest in life insurance product like an annuity.
So annuities are a little bit different. Annuities are investment vehicles. And you certainly can invest your IRA into an annuity. When the IRS talks about life insurance, it's investing in actual life insurance policies. Annuities are not life insurance policies. They're investments that you put money into, and it accrues interest over time and pays you back at a certain time. But it's actual life insurance products, either on the life of yourself or life of somebody else. That's what's prohibited. So annuities certainly can be held inside of an IRA.
And in terms of life insurance, right? So you cannot do it directly into the retirement accounts, but right now with the CARES Act, the opportunity that you're getting is you're taking that money out, and actually life insurance product is a good way to keep that money and start returning it, 1/3 of it at a time every year, or just just pay taxes on that much money.
Mhm. Yep.
So thanks, Scott. So again, just moving on, right? Just wrapping up that how can think outside the stock help, right? So first of all, we are very passionate about educating. We are, providing that data-driven education, so you could confidently invest in, different vehicles in terms of the multifamily syndication, for example. And also we provide that assistance for the outside the stock banking system. So creating that wealth optimization account for you, that's what we are helping with. And as you can see, that the education that we are providing is just not the education that we have learned from, but we're also trying to connect you with the resources like Scott, for example, here, which brings you that different mindset, the different perspective in your investment strategy, and also who can provide a very cost effective way. So we personally have looked into different SD IRA companies, and they get really expensive. So Scott, at this point, would you really want to would like to share the cost that they can have for these SDIRAs? Because I think that was one of the crucial aspect for me to go with you too, because it's really cost effective.
It is. We charge it's $50 to open up an account, get the account open, started, getting the money transferred or rolled over. We charge a one-time $95 fee to review the paperwork for your investment. So going through those subscription documents and getting them titled properly is a one-time $95 charge. And our annual fee for an investment tops out at $295 a year. So if you're investing 50,000 or 500,000, that's what the fees are. You're looking at about $150 to start the account and a flat $295 a year going forward, regardless of the value. The work is the same. That includes us receiving money into your account, paying money out of the account, doing all the IRS reporting. That's the fees that we have. So pretty, I think fairly reasonable, especially when you consider if you had $100,000 401k or IRA and you're paying a company to management, you're probably paying them maybe even 1.5%. So you're paying them almost $1,000 a year to manage that 401k or that IRA for you on $100,000. And if you were self-directing it, you'd be paying less than $300 a year.
Yeah, and that's really great, Scott. Thank you for sharing that. And I have seen fees anything between even 2,000 to 3,000 too. So, that's one of the purpose, that when we have these resources, connecting you with that resources, and again, all this education is free for you. And so we highly encourage that, when you see the new education coming up, just sign up and, be there, or listen to it, the recording of it. We will have the guest speakers time to time. The next way that we help you is giving that one wealth strategy session to create your own blueprint for that banking system. So you can, and also how you can use that to use the same dollar twice and create that alternate investment plan. We also have, high quality partnership, strategic partnership with syndicators. From time to time, just keep an eye on the investments that keep on coming in. And for the first time investors or the nth time investors, we also provide that handholding, the process of, find where to find that money, what's the most effective way of investing into it, that one-on-one process handholding, also connecting resources like like Scott. So the next steps really for you is, just look at what your goal is. I would always advise you to start with the objective, and with the stock market stabilized, start looking at where do you want to move your money from, and keep an eye on the education and investment flows, and just connect with us and talk about what you want to do. Spreading the knowledge is another thing that we would highly recommend. You can see a lot of people around you would help with this knowledge, just knowing this, understanding this. So please feel free to join our Facebook group, post a comment there about how you felt about this information that you got today, or just forward this information to your folks who can join our program and start getting this knowledge. The knowledge is safe and best to go viral. Um, we already addressed the questions. And for you, the live stream attendees, we are also offering that free strategy sessions where we will create your custom blueprint and invest your dollars at 2 different places, and also some alternate investment strategies. Go ahead and schedule if you are ready for it. We have put up the calendar up here, and there is a question. Okay, thank you, Madhvi and Scott, for information. Of course, welcome. And thank you so much for your patience, Scott, you and everybody else to stick around and, pass that hour too. Great information, Scott. Thank you so much. I would like to close and thank you again. And everybody just stay safe. Enjoy the time outside safely as you can, and just connect. Don't forget that knowledge, once you have that knowledge, if you keep it, it just stays there and gets forgotten. So if you want to take action, the time is now to take that action. So just pick up a call and just talk to us, and we will be here. Connect with that for that strategy session. So thank you so much again.
Yep. Thank you, Bobby. It was a pleasure being on. I'm glad we had some great comments there. People saying they got something out of it, which is the goal. And take what you learned today and start to apply it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining in. Thanks everybody. Have a great one. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.